This is episode 0025 of Gary's Glorious Golden Nuggets. And today we have Nicholas Prouten, and that's the last time I'm going to call him Nicholas. Nicholas has been an entrepreneur. He spent about 10 years in the tech industry, and then he moved on to the next half decade in the blockchain realm of life, working with something called the LODE project. So explain to me what the LODE project is, Nick.
Well, first of all, Gary, thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here. So the LODE project at its core, like peeling back all the marketing layers and everything, the LODE project at its core is an initiative to take the experience of precious metals and bring it into the modern era. It's about taking gold and silver and making them liquid again for the world. And we use blockchain technology as the vehicle to make that happen, to give people a whole new experience and way to purchase precious metals.
It's pretty darn clear, succinct, and it really makes sense, especially when you're considering what's going on with the fiat currencies of the world. They're just kind of fluctuating, going crazy right now.
I think it's pretty clear, regardless of whether you're in the United States or the United Kingdom or even Canada, like myself, that there is a great deal of instability in the world right now. And traditionally, when we've seen that instability, people flock to precious metals, to gold and silver, as kind of safe havens against whether it be inflation or political turmoil or what have you, right? And so with the advent of blockchain technology, we now have the means to, in a very distributed and global fashion, give people access to these metals at a rate that is actually a fraction of the retail market. I don't know if you know this or whether you stack gold or silver, but usually there are pretty significant premiums attached when you go to your local bullion dealer, sometimes as high as a 50% markup of what you see on the spot price. But because of how we have built this system, we can give people a much better rate to enter into the market, much more close to what you could, to the actual spot price of silver.
There is a huge golden nugget there. And that one was silver. So let's just keep going, folks. Here, Nick, you've been an entrepreneur for a while. What do you wish you had known before you became an entrepreneur?
This might seem like a little obvious to everybody, maybe not. I don't know other people's internal dialogues, but for me, no man is an island. Even you hear this story all the time in the entrepreneurial world. He's a self-made man, right? Self-made individual, a self-made woman. But the reality is there is always a network of people standing behind an entrepreneur that makes them a success. And so do not fear collaboration, even if it can initially seem like somebody is a competitor to you. I find that at the heart of it, most people are good in wanting to help lift each other up. And so don't be afraid of collaboration. Don't be afraid of networking. You do not have to be this isolated being that has to carry the load all by themselves. That is definitely the one most major nugget of knowledge that I wish I'd had known internally before entering the entrepreneurial landscape.
I think that's really true, Nick. A lot of people come into the world saying, oh, I'm a solo entrepreneur. I do it all myself. I do every aspect of it, and nobody can. Nobody can.
And even if you're depending on like third-party services, like you use a SaaS technology, the reality is that there's a network of people that are supporting you to help make your initiatives happen. And the sooner you acknowledge that, the more powerful you're going to be for it.
Absolutely. And it's all about leveraging yourself and having somebody else who's better at what you're doing, freeing you up to do what you do best.
Yeah.
Just makes sense.
You brought up something there, Era, that I think is really interesting. I think as a leader, a lot of people are specialists and then they become generalists over time. But I think that a good leader is a generalist overall. They carry the core vision, perhaps some industry knowledge if they're a developer, if they're building a tech project. But they, especially at the beginning, have to fulfill all of the roles until they can build a team to support them, right? And what you're looking for are people who are specialists in the arenas where you are weakest, right? At least that's how I view the journey, and that you as the CEO, as the top of the ladder, as the head of the hierarchy, you need to have a basic understanding of all the different elements. And I think once you can accomplish that, again, you're going to be a stronger leader and a stronger entrepreneur for it.
That was loaded with all kinds of things. And this question is going to kind of mirror off of that. Failures. Mm-hmm. I don't like failure, but let's just say you didn't get the outcome you wanted.
Sure.
What did you learn from that? What's the biggest one?
What was the biggest one? I mean, it's hard for me to isolate a single failure that was kind of like a defining moment. But I will say that if you work in the tech space, the entire tech industry is built upon mountains and mountains of failure. It is an entire industry based upon iteration, right? There is a saying in the Silicon Valley world of like, I think it's like fail fast, right? Because all failure is a learning experience. Heck, even the process of going through, bug fixes and user experience testing is a giant exercise in understanding where your shortcomings are and how to best to address them. So again, sometimes I encounter individuals who are scared of that failure. They're scared to say, I screwed up or we didn't quite hit the mark with this. And I just want to encourage those people to embrace that failure and to learn from it. It's not about the fact that you will fail, because you will. Given a long enough timeline, the success rate for everyone drops to zero. That's a famous movie quote, and I think it might have been Fight Club, but I can't remember specifically which one. But given a long enough timeline, your success rate will inevitably drop to zero. And what is the measure of an individual there is how they handle that failure and how they learn from it and build upon it, not the fact that they failed themselves. So
I don't think you're tested until you hit that wall that
yeah.
people call failure or the wrong result or whatever else, and it's your attitude. That's the mindset of a true entrepreneur is, okay, what do I learn? What are the possibilities? Let's move forward. And that's what it's
you have
all
to be
about.
you have to be able to bounce back, and it's hard, right? It's an emotional journey, especially because with a lot of visionaries and a lot of entrepreneurs, they have this grandiose vision and they can see the end, right? They can see where they want to go, where they're going. And, the Stephen Covey's begin with the end in mind. They have that, and then when you are trying to get there and you fall short of that, it can feel like, oh my God, all this weight weighing down upon yourself. You have this immense emotional response, or at least you can, right? But understanding that Rome wasn't built in a day and that it is such an iterative, long and arduous process to get to that end result is really, really important. There's that metaphor of the bamboo tree. There's a great public speaker out there. I can't remember his name for the life of me, but he talks about how I think it takes 5 years and before you see the bamboo tree break above ground. And when we are looking in this really, really, really animated, fast-paced 24-hour news cycle, oh, this company is blowing up all over the map. They see all of this exciting stuff happening to their competitors, and they're like, why is this company experiencing this but not my company? And it's like, well, if you look at the numbers, this company has been around half a decade longer than you. What you're seeing now is the culmination of 10 years of work, and you can experience that too, but it's going to take you time to reach that point.
Fabulous. So what advice would you give to an aspiring entrepreneur who says, I kind of like to follow your footsteps? How did you do it?
Fell upwards is a lot of it, to be honest, but realistically, it all begins with a vision. If you want to create a great product and you want to have and you want to create something great for the world, I would take a quick inventory of what skills you have and what skills you lack, and I would begin to not just draft out all those ideas and actually write them down and articulate them into a real digestible format, because again, there's an important step that I think a lot of people miss in their entrepreneurial journey, where they say, I have a great idea, and they start talking to people about this great idea, but they haven't really solidified what this idea is. It's this amorphous thing that slightly changes every time we talk to people. Get it down on paper, like really clearly identify what it is that you want to create and how you want to bring value to the world. And then go out and start talking to your network and start reaching for people that can help you build the team and put that together. That might be consultants and individuals like myself who say, you know what, maybe I'm not a good fit for your project, but you know what, I work with this company, or I worked with this company in the past, and they have the skill set that might help you, right? That I think is probably one of the most important steps of the early stages of an entrepreneurial journey, because that's depending on what you're doing. If you're doing something like retail or e-commerce, get a website up, get an email capture going, run some basic advertising, and then go start doing some stuff like that. But largely, if you're going for a macro, big grandiose visions, trying to make something that hasn't been done before, that's the way to do it, is to clearly articulate what you want to create and then start talking to people about it. And eventually what will happen is you'll start stumbling across those people that will become the core of your team, or the core people that will help you to accomplish your goals.
Nick, you are just dropping one golden nugget after another after another. I am so glad that I'm talking to you today. So what resources, you've named a lot of different resources out there, but can you just tell me, you personally, is there a resource out there that you just couldn't do it without?
Well, I think Gmail is pretty standard for most people these days. If you don't have an email client, it's kind of hard to get a hold of you. It's an interesting comment to make. I think it really depends on what you're doing. I don't think there is one tried and true and proven thing that is consistent all the way through. If you are a digital product, having a website is super essential. It's core to making a presence for yourself, right? It's basically your brick and mortar shop in the virtual world, right? And being accessible on social media is probably a very relevant thing to you. However, if you are something that is more interpersonal or more services oriented, having a website might be less relevant than having great connections within the industry that you're working in. So outside of having the basics of website and email and all that stuff, I wouldn't really say that there is a must-have for your arsenal. The must-have for your arsenal is the dedication and the commitment to see things through, and when the times get tough, and to be able to clearly communicate what you're talking about. Again, I can't stress this enough. When your idea is amorphous, like it's all over the map, it's difficult for people to clearly understand how they can help or how they can be a fit, because you yourself can't describe it.
Let me kind of switch things around a little bit, because I want to talk about influences. There are like 3 people or books or authors or groups or anything that you've been involved with that have really helped you along your way.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is going to sound kind of corny, but one of the first ones on my list is my mother, Karen Olson. Look her up. Atomic 47 Labs, an incredibly influential woman, absolute powerhouse. Tech entrepreneur, woman in tech, which is a male-dominated industry most of her life. I would argue most of my business acumen probably came as a byproduct of being her child. So love you, Mom. That's my Oscar speech right there. Beyond that, there are tons of really great resources to read. I think the book is called Pillars of Persuasion. I'll get the precise Pillars of Persuasion. Really, really powerful book that really gives you a clear understanding and look into how to sell an idea, how to compel people and to make people want to get involved in those things. And having an understanding of psychology, I think, is really important, no matter what you are trying to sell, especially in the early days of entrepreneurialism, right? We all wish that we could be the titan of industry at Facebook, right? But it's going to take time to get there. So the Pillars of Persuasion is a great read. Other influences that have impacted me, it really is, that's actually a bit of a tough one. I think that, for myself, I'm a very shoot from the hip kind of person. You pick things up as you go along through your journey. I think there are a lot of mentors that I've had through my experience in tech, individuals that have touched me in different ways in different positions from the various jobs that I've had, rather than one sort of monolithic entity. But again, I would say if you're just starting your journey, pick up all of the top 10 entrepreneurial how-to books as you can, and you're going to glean the stuff for you that is going to work best for you. I found that whether it was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People or Pillars of Persuasion, not everything in there was applicable to my world, right? There were nuggets, there were golden nuggets in each of those little things, and I took away from that what was going to be for me. So one of the most interesting tidbits of titans of industry that people may or may not know is that they read. Like these titans, the Jeff Bezoses of the world, they read a lot. They listen to books, audiobooks on like 1.5 speed. And accumulating knowledge, that old saying, knowledge is power, is so incredibly important. So that activity in of itself is a habit that I would encourage everybody to get into, is to just absorb as much knowledge as you can.
I absolutely agree that leaders are readers. That's all there is to it. So what's the most common myth about being an entrepreneur that you'd like to take a moment to just bust wide open?
Oh, I'm going to call this struggle porn. Yeah. Struggle porn is this attitude that is so toxic in the entrepreneurial world, and in, like, you see it in influencers like Gary Vee and stuff like that, where they're like, you always got to be busting your ass. You always got to be working 110%. You've always got to be like on the ball, always be hustling, get that money, type of attitude that is incredibly toxic for your psyche as a human being. You are not a machine. That is the reality. You're a biological organism that's made up of blood, veins, heart, bone, brain, and it needs downtime. It needs work-life balance. It needs permission to rest and permission to play, as much as permission to kick ass and be a great entrepreneur. And the idea that you've always got to be pushing and always got to be hustling and you've always got to be, working that extra mile and don't take Sundays off, and that's not healthy. You will find maybe you might accomplish your goal, but you won't feel happier for it, because you will be so burnt out. You'll be so burnt out, and that burnout is a real thing that ruins a lot of people, not even on just entrepreneurs, but employees as well, right? And so I'm a really antithetical to that way of life. I think there is room in this world and room in your life to be a dedicated entrepreneur that has a really strong mission and, works hard to accomplish that while giving themselves a work-life balance. I don't know how else I could put that. I think that is one of the most toxic myths of entrepreneurialism out there today, and that is one that should be really put to bed.
I think that's absolutely true. If you're an entrepreneur, when you work, you really work.
Yeah.
And you don't play games while you're working. And when you're first starting your company, you seem to feel like you're working all day long, all night long, just to meet whatever you need to meet to get the job going. But there comes a point in time when you just cannot continue to drive yourself that hard. You're either going to burn out, you're going to self-sabotage, you're going to ruin what is life all about. If you have a marriage, your marriage is going to end. If you have children, they're going to learn to hate you because you became so driven as an entrepreneur. And so this whole concept about get this work-life balance. And not only that, it's not all about just making the money. The money is important, and that's part of the reason why we do what we do. But we also
It's a
have social responsibility that we need to consider.
Absolutely. The money is a means to an end for us to provide the quality of life that we want to experience, right? And of course, your project, whether that be technology or maybe a charitable service or, a retail service, that's about bringing value to the world. But you got to be able to help yourself first and take care of the things that are most important in your life first. Because as far as I know, we only get one shot at this life, right? And you can't take the money with you at the end of the day.
No, you can't. And we can certainly debate about what you can take, but the truth of the matter is we definitely know you can't take the money, you can't take the house, can't take the boat. It's not coming with
Right?
you.
Not coming with
Absolutely.
you. I mean, just to close the thought off too, like, you can watch just about an infinite number of films or read an infinite number of books that touch on this exact subject. The person who had it all that pushed too hard and flew too close to the sun and got burned. And nobody wants to be Icarus.
Nobody wants to be Icarus. Not even Icarus ended up wanting to be Icarus.
Exactly.
Okay. So if you could step into my shoes and say, I wish Gary would ask me this question because I want to give this answer, what question would that be?
Oh my goodness. What would that be? I don't know. Gary, I would ask people, I would say, Nick, how can people get in touch with you?
That's coming up, but let's do that now. Nick, how can people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So you can head on over to lodepay.com and join our Telegram channel today. I'm really easy to access from there. You can also reach out to me at Nicholas Prouten on Twitter. I'm a very friendly guy, very social, and always happy to answer questions about, and be a sounding board for new projects and ideas that you're looking at and exploring and investigating into. We're always available on LodePay Media. If you're interested in checking out some of the content that we produce and some of the things that we talk about out there. And yeah, we have with LODE specifically, we're a really friendly community of people in over 100 different countries. And myself, nothing brings me greater joy than having the opportunity to discuss cool ideas with people. But if it comes to an additional sort of less shameless self-promotion question, I don't know if I feel kind of like it's a cop-out, but we've touched on so many of the things that are near and dear to my heart today that I think that to an extent we've hit the core of what I love to communicate to people and what I love to talk to people about. So I don't know if I got one, Gary.
Well, let me tell you what I would say at this point, because you have just demonstrated for me what I have discovered in this digital world. When I worked in brick and mortar industry, brick and mortar businesses, the concept of somebody giving freely of themselves, giving value to somebody was rare because they didn't want to give the competition anything. In this digital realm, people seem to have a sense of gratitude for what they got, for how they got it, how it arrived, and they realize that in a digital world, there is no set size to the pie. If you become successful, that just means the pie became bigger. I have more success because you became successful. I am amazed at the number of really successful entrepreneurs in the digital environment who have freely given up their time, their advice, their counsel to me. Nobody in there, at one point I was nobody. I was just a guy that was just saying, can you tell me what you know about this? And they did it. They just told me, they shared. And this world is like that. It's unlike anything I ever experienced in all the years I worked in brick and mortar business.
I think there is a truth to that, and a lot of the human experience is about learning. And I firmly believe that collaboration is one of the core strengths of humankind. If you think about how we developed as a society, we went from small tribes, to townships, to cities, to massive global governments. And really, if you believe in the sort of Star Trek vision of the future, inevitably we are going to reach a point where we are one giant global society working together. And that fierceness, that ability to work with people despite our differences, despite potentially being competitors and so on, is really what makes us different from any other species out there on Earth. There are other intelligent species, but our ability to collaborate and build and iterate with each other is a core strength that I think is to be celebrated. I think especially in today's really polarized news cycle that we see on right now, we're falling into an old habit. We've seen this cycle before where people are antagonizing and demonizing each other and really building off this fear. But fear is the mind killer, right? Fear is the mind killer. And if you can look past that and look at the fact that we have a lot more to learn it from each other, from our differences, than fear them, I think you're gonna be stronger for it.
I totally agree. I totally agree. The world has gotten better whenever we realize, oh, I actually depend on them.
Right.
They can't be my enemy because I depend on them.
Right.
So let me just say to you, I've really enjoyed our time with you, but I always give every guest 2 minutes to say anything that they want to say uninterrupted, whatever's on their hearts. So Nick, it's your 2 minutes.
All right. Well, I will say this. I work in a project that's about bringing what we believe to be honest money back into the forefront and giving people easy access to safe havens for times of turbulence. I think with blockchains and cryptocurrencies, gold and silver as well, what we're witnessing right now, is the biggest wealth generation event of our lifetimes. I think there's been in the past a lot of reluctance to look at this blockchain technology as legitimate. But if you take a look at what is happening with these major financial institutions, these powerful banks and businesses that have century old at this point, a lot of them are now investing into this technology, into cryptocurrencies, into blockchain. And if you don't have a digital strategy for your wealth, it is time to start looking at that. I think we're not through all the turbulence and disruption yet. And I would hate for people to be caught in the tailwind and be left unprepared. So if you're uncertain about how to get started or what that means to get started, again, I highly recommend reaching out to myself or somebody within your own network that is experiencing these things, because there is an incredible opportunity to create prosperity for your life and for the lives of billions of others of people. And we want you to be there for that. I think you might be on mute there.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is Nick Prout, gentleman from Canada with the LODE project. Great pearls of wisdom, gold nuggets galore today. If you came to this show today and you said, oh, I didn't get anything out of it, you weren't listening. That's all I have to say. You did not listen. If you find value in this show, please subscribe, share what you've downloaded today with someone else, make the show grow. Nick, I really want to thank you for participating today. Thank you so much.
Hey, Gary, it was an absolute pleasure. Take care.
Take care.